Rain fell in thin, glowing sheets over the city, each drop catching neon light from the hovering billboards above like shattered glass drifting through the air. The funeral hall wasn't traditional. It floated halfway above ground, supported by silent anti-gravity pillars, reserved only for high-tier citizens, diplomats, and those who had crossed into the interstellar corporate elite. Inside, everything was too clean, too bright, too carefully designed to feel human. Even grief here looked like it had a price tag. She stood at the center, hands folded tightly in front of her, staring at the holographic memorial flickering in front of her husband's coffin. Kale Virex smiled back at the world in frozen light, calm eyes, gentle alien features subtly mixed with human warmth, the kind of face that had once made investors trust him and competitors fear him. He wasn't just her husband. He was something rare in this galaxy, an Andromedan-born hybrid who had chosen Earth not for conquest, but for curiosity. And from that curiosity, he had built something impossible, a barbecue sauce empire that somehow became a galactic phenomenon. Virex Flame wasn't just food. It was a currency of culture, traded across colonies, smuggled into diplomatic dinners, and banned in 3 systems for emotional destabilization effects. People joked it was just sauce. But billion credit corporations don't try to buy just sauce for nothing. The widow swallowed hard as the hologram shifted, replaying Kale's final recorded message. His voice filled the hall, calm and slightly distorted by alien vocal harmonics. "If you are watching this," he said softly, "then I am already outside your timeline." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Alien diplomats tilted their heads in silent understanding, while human executives tried to hide their confusion behind polite expressions. She didn't cry. Not yet. Something deeper than grief was sitting in her chest, something colder, sharper. Awareness. Because her parents were not here. They were supposed to be here. They always arrived late, always made everything about themselves, always found a way to turn tragedy into commentary. But today, when it mattered most, they were absent. A notification blinked on her wrist implant. A message from her mother. "We are attending a necessary psychiatric evaluation regarding family emotional stability. Proceed without us." Her fingers tightened slightly. Psychiatric evaluation? That was not concern. That was control. She glanced around the hall, watching the guests react to Kale's legacy being formally announced. Lawyers in sleek black neural suits stepped forward, projecting inheritance data into the air. Every line of code confirmed what everyone already suspected. Kale Virex had left everything to her. Full control. No loopholes. No shared authority. A billion credit empire, locked into her name alone. And that was exactly why her parents should have been here. Instead, they were somewhere else, sitting in a controlled environment, talking to someone with authority over minds. Her gaze drifted back to Kale's coffin. Something felt off. Not in the way of superstition, but in the way of systems detecting interference. A faint glitch ran across the holographic display, a brief flicker in Kale's face. Too quick for anyone else to notice, but enough for her implant to register a background signal anomaly. Unauthorized access attempt. She froze slightly. The memorial system was encrypted at military level. No one should be able to touch it. Unless someone already had. A soft murmur spread through the crowd as another layer of data appeared. Asset protections, subsidiary transfers, and corporate safeguards embedded by Kale himself before death. Most people saw only well structures. She saw something else hidden beneath it, a secondary tracking ping. Active. 2 devices. Both registered under her parents' names. And both currently not at any hospital or therapy center. They were at a private facility. One that specialized in behavioral evaluation. Her expression remained calm, but something inside her shifted. The grief didn't disappear. It reorganized itself into something more dangerous. Because now it wasn't just loss. It was pattern recognition. And the pattern didn't look like mourning. It looked like planning. Far from the funeral hall, deep inside a private high-rise facility that did not appear on any public map, Her parents sat in a room designed to look soothing but felt anything but. The walls were soft white, curved like they were trying to erase corners of thought. Gentle ambient music played at a frequency meant to lower resistance, not comfort. Across from them sat Dr. Malcolm Red. He looked nothing like a professional therapist anymore. His once polished reputation had decayed into something performative and unstable, like a man who had spent too long monetizing other people's minds. His suit still carried traces of his old fame, subtle branding hidden in the lining, a relic from his reality show days, but his eyes told a different story. He was still chasing attention, just in darker rooms now. "I understand your concern," he said smoothly, leaning back as if he were already winning. "A grieving daughter inheriting a multi-system corporation, especially one tied to non-human biological innovation, that can create instability narratives." The father immediately nodded. "Exactly. She's not stable. Not after him." The mother crossed her arms tighter. "She was attached. Too attached. It wasn't normal. Not even for humans." Dr. Red smiled faintly at that word, normal. It was always his favorite entry point. "What you're suggesting," he said slowly, "is emotional dependency bias. Possibly enhanced by alien biochemical bonding traits. If her husband had Andromedan lineage, there could be pheromone-linked attachment reinforcement." The parents exchanged a look. They didn't fully understand what that meant. But they understood opportunity. "Yes," the father said quickly. "Exactly that. That's why she cannot control the company. She's emotionally compromised." Dr. Red tapped the table lightly. "Compromised is a legal term in corporate psychiatry. If proven, it can justify temporary guardianship over executive assets." The room went quieter. That was the moment the conversation stopped being about concern and started becoming about ownership. The mother leaned forward slightly. "We don't want to hurt her. We just want stability restored. The company should be protected from emotional decision-making." Dr. Red nodded as if he had heard this excuse 1,000 times before. "Of course. Protection. That's always the language families use when they mean control but want it to sound like care." He didn't accuse them. He never needed to. His job wasn't truth, it was framing. A small holographic camera activated above them. The parents didn't notice. Dr. Red always recorded case studies for his private network. It was part of his new business model. Live psychological evaluations streamed to curated audiences who paid to watch real-time breakdowns of wealthy family dynamics. "This session will help establish baseline instability markers," he said casually. "We'll begin compiling behavioral evidence." The father frowned. "Evidence?" "Yes," Dr. Red replied smoothly. "For court-level psychiatric review." That satisfied them. They thought they were building a case against their daughter. What they didn't realize was that he was building content. Meanwhile, hidden beneath the polished surface of the room, Dr. Red's system quietly connected to an encrypted broadcast network. A forgotten audience lit up across multiple feeds: corporate lawyers, bored investors, alien psychology enthusiasts, even underground gamblers who bet on inheritance disputes like sport. He pressed one small icon. "Live." "Welcome," he said softly, smiling now in a way that didn't reach his eyes, "to a private evaluation session involving a high-value interspecies inheritance subject." The parents still didn't notice the subtle red pulse in the air indicating broadcast activation. They were too busy thinking they were winning. Dr. Red tilted his head slightly, watching their faces as if they were experiments finally beginning to react. "Now," he said gently, "tell me again why you believe your daughter should not inherit the Virex Flame Corporation." Outside the room, the system began recording every word. And somewhere far away, the funeral of Cale Virex was about to become something none of them were prepared for. Because control, once performed in public, stops belonging to the people who think they're holding it. The funeral hall had gone quiet in that uneasy way silence behaves when it knows something is about to break. The widow stood motionless at the center of it all, her eyes fixed on the inheritance projections still hovering above Cale's coffin. Legal data, corporate structures, asset chains, everything confirming she was now the sole controller of the Virex Flame Empire. Yet something in the air felt wrong, like a system running a hidden process beneath the visible one. Then her wrist implant blinked. Incoming stream detected. Unauthorized broadcast link attached. Before she could refuse it, the air above the coffin shifted. The memorial hologram flickered violently, then split into multiple unstable layers. Kale's smiling face distorted for a moment, and then stabilized into something far more aware. Not just a recording. A response. The voice returned, deeper now, layered with synthetic harmonics and alien modulation. If this feed is active, Kale said calmly, then someone is attempting to override my posthumous control protocols. A ripple went through the hall. Alien diplomats straightened. Human executives leaned forward. Lawyers immediately began running emergency compliance scans. No one spoke, because everyone understood what this meant. A dead man was speaking through secured inheritance infrastructure. The widow's breath caught, but she didn't move. Something inside her already knew Kale had prepared for this possibility. The hologram shifted again, and suddenly the room itself changed. Every reflective surface in the hall, glass, polished metal, even the floor, began projecting secondary feeds. And then it appeared. A live stream. Her parents. Sitting in that clinical white room. Talking to Dr. Red. The audio wasn't muted. It was fully exposed. She's emotionally unstable, her father was saying confidently. We just need confirmation she can't manage the corporation. The mother added quickly. She's grieving too deeply. It's affecting judgment. The psychiatrist nodded on screen like a man enjoying a private performance. So the goal is guardianship transfer based on psychiatric incapacity. The widow's hands slowly curled into fists. The funeral hall erupted in overlapping reactions. Confusion, outrage, calculation. Alien investors began rapidly translating the stream, realizing they were watching a live corporate fraud attempt unfold in real time. Some even started placing speculative bets through encrypted networks, treating the situation like a high-stakes legal arena. Then Kale's system activated fully. A deep mechanical pulse echoed through the hall. Flame core initiated, the system announced. The air lit up with red-orange geometric patterns, forming the shape of a rotating sigil above the coffin. Kale's voice returned, sharper now. I suspected post-mortem asset interference from internal family sources. The widow finally stepped forward. For the first time, her grief stopped being passive. It became directional. What did you do, Kale? She whispered. The hologram softened slightly, almost like it was responding to her alone. I made sure True survives me. Suddenly, the live stream feed from Dr. Red's room was forcibly synchronized into the funeral hall projection at full scale. Every guest could now see the conversation in real time. And then Flame Core began releasing archived data. Hidden recordings. Family dinners. Private arguments. Subtle financial conversations. Every moment where her parents had questioned Kale's legitimacy, his intelligence, his right to exist in their world. The hall filled with uncomfortable laughter, not because it was funny, but because it was absurdly transparent. Even alien observers, who had no cultural understanding of human family drama, recognized the pattern, greed disguised as concern. Dr. Red, on screen, suddenly looked uneasy. This wasn't part of the evaluation, he muttered. But it was too late. The system had already indexed him. Unauthorized psychiatric manipulation detected, Flame Core stated. Broadcasting to interstellar compliance authorities. The parents panicked instantly. This is a misunderstanding, the father shouted. We were protecting her, the mother added quickly. But their words were now just data points in a larger system already processing intent versus outcome. The widow didn't look at them. She looked at Kale's projection instead. And for the first time since the funeral began, she understood something very clearly. Kale hadn't just left her an empire. He had left her the ability to watch betrayal happen in real time, and make sure it never stayed hidden again. The live stream didn't just spread, it multiplied. Within minutes, Kale's Flame Core broadcast had escaped the funeral hall's local projection grid and entered interstellar channels reserved for corporate disputes of extreme value. What began as a private family manipulation attempt was now being watched across multiple systems like a live courtroom drama, complete with betting markets, legal analysts, and alien behavioral experts commenting in real time. Dr. Red's face on the feed had gone pale in a way that suggested he was finally remembering he was not the one in control. "This broadcast is unauthorized. Terminate the stream!" He barked at his console, slamming commands that no longer responded. But Flame Core didn't respond to him. It responded to intent, structure, and deception patterns. And his room, once designed to feel soft and safe, now felt like a stage that had been turned against him. The parents, sitting beside him, were no longer confident. The father's voice had dropped into something defensive. "This is being taken out of context. We are concerned guardians, nothing more." The mother, however, looked at the screen with growing panic. The evidence wasn't just being shown, it was being categorized, archived, and legally indexed in real time. Across the funeral hall, the widow stood still. The grief inside her had not vanished, but it had changed shape again. It was no longer something that weighed her down. It was something she could stand on. Kale's hologram softened, its tone shifting from system authority to something closer to memory. "I calculated this outcome with 87.4% probability," he said quietly. "Human emotional inheritance conflicts are predictable when wealth exceeds empathy thresholds." A faint ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the alien observers. Not mockery, recognition. Many of them had seen similar patterns in their own systems: families fracturing under resource pressure, love rebranded as ownership. The widow finally spoke, her voice steady but low. "So you built all this, knowing they would do this?" The hologram paused for a fraction of a second, like a thought simulation completing. "Yes," Kale answered. "But also to ensure they could not succeed." At that moment, Flame Core escalated again. A new layer activated, interstellar compliance override. Legal frameworks from multiple systems began connecting automatically to the broadcast. The parents' financial access froze in real time. Corporate holdings tied to their identity began reclassifying under fraud in progress investigation status. Dr. Red stood abruptly. "This is a violation of psychiatric confidentiality." A calm synthetic voice responded instantly through the system. "Confidentiality voided due to criminal intent detection." That was the moment he realized something had changed. He was no longer conducting an evaluation. He was inside one. And the system evaluating him was far more advanced than anything he had ever controlled. On the funeral side, the widow stepped closer to the coffin. Her reflection merged briefly with Kale's hologram, human and alien light overlapping. "You really planned everything," she said softly, almost smiling through the tension. Kale's projection tilted its head slightly. "I planned the part where you would survive it," he replied. "The rest was just probability management." For the first time, the hall went quiet in a different way. Not tense. Resolved. Outside the building, orbital vessels belonging to alien investors began adjusting positions, subtly acknowledging the shift in ownership confirmation protocols. The Empire was no longer contested. It was stabilizing under its rightful controller. Inside the stream, Dr. Red made one last attempt to salvage control. "She is emotionally compromised. This entire system is biased toward alien influence conditioning." But even as he spoke, his own data feed was being dissected and redistributed to compliance courts. The widow looked at the feed one last time. Not at her parents. Not at Dr. Red. But at the system trying to redefine her grief as weakness. And she finally understood the final joke Kale had left behind. Virex Flame wasn't just a sauce empire. It was a truth engine. And once truth started running, nobody, family, psychiatrist, or corporate greed, could negotiate with it anymore.